This is the Honor Magic VS, Honor's new globally launched foldable flagship. Foldable phones are starting to multiply, and although the Galaxy Z Fold 4 might be top dog for now, it's time for it to run into some competition. I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's see what the Honor Magic VS is all about in our full review. The Honor Magic VS is a foldable phone with a classic design. While it's closed, it behaves like a large smartphone, with you interacting with an outer cover screen. But then you can unfold the phone and reveal a larger tablet-like inner screen. The Magic VS is actually a second-gen device, but the first one, the Magic V, was only sold in China. Honor has included quite a few upgrades, including a new hinge, new chipset, a larger battery, and the cameras have gotten revamped too. Let's start off with the hinge design, which is lighter than before and supposed to be quite sturdy. The phone folds flat, with no gap, unlike the Galaxy Z Fold 4. The crease where the device folds over isn't invisible, but it still feels relatively minimal. And the Magic VS's hinge can keep the phone open at different angles, which could enable some extra functionality, potentially. But more on that in a bit. The Magic VS is made of glass, and we've had a chance to check out both the frosted cyan and the glossy black colorways. There's actually also a vegan leather variant, but that's meant for China only. Overall, the phone is both taller and wider than the Z Fold 4, but also thinner, and weighs about the same. One area in which the Z Fold is ahead of the pack though is in IP-rated waterproofing. There's no such thing here. Let's go over the displays, starting with the outer one. The Magic VS has a 6.45-inch OLED here, with a 1080p resolution and a 120Hz refresh rate. It's notable that the Magic VS's cover screen is not just larger, but its aspect ratio is wider than the Z Fold 4's, making it a bit more comfortable to use. When unfolded, the Magic VS has a 7.9-inch OLED with a 1984 by 2272 resolution and a 90Hz refresh rate. It is notable that this refresh rate is lower than the 120 you'd get on the inner display of the Z Fold, but it still smooths things out when you're swiping around. Neither of the Magic VS's screens will dial the refresh rate down when idling to save energy though. The Magic VS's inner display also isn't quite as bright as its competitors, though it definitely isn't bad. We measured a maximum of 600 nits with the manual slider, and it can boost to 880 nits in auto mode in bright conditions. The cover screen, on the other hand, can achieve nearly 1300 nits. Content looks good here on either screen. They're sharp and contrasty, and you have support for both 10-bit color and HDR10+. The color accuracy is respectable too. For audio, the Honor Magic VS has a pair of stereo speakers. Their loudness is very good, and the sound quality is nice too, with noticeable bass.
I'm wide awake, but you're a nightmare.
You can wake up and unlock the phone with the side-mounted fingerprint reader built into the power button. And the Magic VS comes with 256 or 512 gigs of storage, which isn't expandable through microSD. The interface of the phone is Honor's MagicUI 7.1 on top of Android 13. It's pretty similar to what you'll find on recent Honor or Huawei phones. One major difference from Huawei though is that here you get full support for Google apps and services. There are plenty of options to customize the looks of your interface. But what you won't find here is an app drawer. All of your apps will appear on the home screen. You can split the screen into two for multitasking, and that can be a vertical or a horizontal split. Some apps don't support horizontal though. And on top of that, you can have a supported app in a floating window, for 3 apps total. When the screen is half folded, certain apps like YouTube will split their UI into the top and bottom halves. But strangely, the camera app doesn't adjust to the folding screen, and you'll end up with the shutter button inside the crease. Folded too far, and the UI disappears onto the cover screen. That means you can't really use the folding phone as a sort of tripod for shooting. And while the phone is unfolded, there's no way to control the cameras through the cover display to take selfies with the rear cameras. There's a viewfinder, but you can't interact with it. Taking selfies with the rear cameras is at this point a key feature for foldable phones, and we're not sure why Honor has left it out from the UI. At least when you're shooting, your subjects can see themselves as a live preview on the cover screen. Under the hood of the Honor Magic VS is a Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 chipset, the top Qualcomm silicon of last year. This means you get high-end performance, but not quite up to the level of this year's new flagships running on a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. On top of that, in CPU benchmarks, the Magic VS even seems to fall behind other phones that have the same chipset. The graphics performance is in line with what you'd expect though. Benchmarks aside, you should expect plenty of power here for heavy games and multitasking. And the thermal management is quite good too, with the Magic VS maintaining high and stable CPU performance throughout our prolonged stress test. The Honor Magic VS has the largest battery of all current foldables at 5000 mAh. For whatever reason though, the battery life is just average, at least when tested on its inner screen. In this case, the phone earned an endurance rating of 85 hours. With the screen-on tests running on the cover display, the scores were much better, for an endurance rating of 100 hours. The Magic VS supports 66-watt charging, and with the bundled adapter, was able to charge from 0 to 85% in half an hour. Quite speedy. Now on to the cameras. On the back, there's a 54-megapixel main cam, an 8-megapixel 3x telephoto cam, and a 50-megapixel ultra-wide cam which has autofocus. The main cam captures very good photos that come out at 12.5 megapixels due to a combination of pixel binning and a slight crop. There's good detail with a balanced rendition. Colors are expressive and there's plenty of contrast. The dynamic range is wide too. If you shoot in the full 54 megapixels, you will get a wider field of view as you're using the whole uncropped sensor. You don't get any real improvement in terms of detail or quality though. 3x zoomed shots from the telephoto cam are solid. Detail is very good and there's no noise. Color reproduction and dynamic range leave nothing to be desired either. The ultra-wide camera doesn't disappoint. Its field of view is extra wide, and it also delivers good sharpness across the frame and excellent detail. The colors and dynamic range are good too. Since the ultra-wide has autofocus, you can use it to take macro close-ups with. The macro mode even has 3 different zoom levels to choose from. In low light conditions, the Magic VS will automatically apply night mode processing to its photos. There's also a night mode you can toggle on, but the results are the same. Shots from the main cam have a balanced exposure with well-developed shadows and preserved detail and highlights. Rather than going for a brightened up and artificial look, the presentation seems pretty true to life. Colors are well saturated, noise is minimal, and the detail is good. When zooming at night, you also get excellent exposures and dynamic range, with again nice color rendition. The level of detail is good, but not quite as sharp as during the day. The ultra-wide also does a great job at night. It produces well-exposed images with excellent dynamic range, good detail, and basically no noise. You do end up with some extra warmth when faced with certain types of light, but it's not too bad. Like I mentioned before, you can't use the external screen as a viewfinder to take selfies with the main cam, so you'll be taking them with one of the 2 identical 16-megapixel front-facing cameras. These selfies are okay, with enough detail, decent dynamic range, and low noise. Videos can be recorded with all 3 rear cameras in 4K, and the main cam can record in up to 60 FPS. The video quality from the main cam is alright. There's a decent amount of detail, but the sharpening is excessive. There's also too much contrast, and this makes a negative impact on the dynamic range. The telephoto cam's footage is actually solid. The detail is crisp, the contrast is still high, but not quite so much in your face, and the dynamic range is good. The ultra-wide's 4K video is even more contrasty though, with limited dynamic range. Detail is rather sketchy too. Stabilization is excellent on the Magic VS, providing praiseworthy stability on all 3 cameras. In low light, 4K video from the main cam is decent. Contrast is still high, and light sources do end up clipped. Halos around lights are controlled well though. Detail is good, if a bit noisy, and colors are well saturated. There is a super night mode as well, which improves the highlights, but is limited to 1080p resolution. So that's the Honor Magic VS. There's a lot to like here. You have the large displays, fast charging, a flagship chipset, and great cameras. However, there are a few things that are holding it back. Its launch price is quite high, and you can currently get its biggest rival, the Galaxy Z Fold 4, for much cheaper. And at the same time, the Z Fold 4 provides features which you don't get here: stylus support, waterproofing, and wireless charging. And we're not sure why rear camera selfies are too much to ask for here. So all in all, while the Magic VS is a nice foldable phone, its shortcomings make it hard to recommend if you're looking for the most value for money. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're looking for alternatives to the Honor Magic VS, you could start off with the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 4. Another option could be the Tecno Phantom V Fold. Let us know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the next one.